So today we're going to look at a poem by Mongane Wally Serote, who became a famous and well-accomplished South African writer. This poem is called The Clothes, and you'll see their clothes hanging on a washing line there. So I'll just read it quickly. There are 4 stanzas. I came home in the morning, there on the stoep, the shoes I know so well, dipped in water like a window crying dew. The shoes rested the first time from when they were new. Now it's forever. I looked back. On the washing line hung a shirt, jacket and trousers, soaked with pity, wrinkled and crying reddish water, perhaps also salty. The pink shirt had a gash on the right, and stains that told the few who know, an item of our death lives. The colourless jacket still had mud, dropping lazily from its body to join the dry earth beneath. The oversized black striped trousers dangled from one hip like a man from a rope neath his head, tired of hoping to hope. So that's the poem, and we're just going to talk about it. So we've got some words on the board, and we're going to have a discussion about this very interesting poem. So, hello, my name is Elsibe, and I'd like to introduce you to my colleague. This is Candice, and we're both in the teaching profession. So what we're going to do today is just have a very casual conversation about the meaning in the poem and how to appreciate it. So what I'd like to tell you first is that the title is really important because clothes symbolize things. The way we dress and the way we present ourselves in clothes says a lot about who we are, if they're fine clothes, if they're old clothes, if they're tattered, if they're well mended, if they're colourful, if they're just plain black monochrome. The clothes often represent who you are. And in this case, the clothes become symbolic because these clothes are now hanging on a washing line and they present something. So, Candice, how did you experience this poem? Any words that you didn't understand?
I found the poem very interesting, ma'am, and some of these words that I didn't understand I wrote down on the blackboard and would like for you to explain them to me.
Okay. So up here we've got the word death live, which occurs down here in the second stanza, line 15. An item of our death lives. So the way one can understand that is that their lives in apartheid, because this was written during apartheid, during the struggle against apartheid. And Mongane Wally Serote is actually talking about a friend of his who died during that period. We're not sure exactly how. So literally what happens here is that he's describing their lives as partly dead, because death live, it's almost like the adjective has a bit of death and a bit of life in it. So it's like they're partly dead, their lives are not really worth living. In the next word, dangled. Dangled is, you would say, a spider dangles from its thread. So it's usually if something hangs from a very thin string or thread, and usually quite a precarious thing. So, you know, it's like when you look at a spider, you think, gosh, that looks like it's going to fall off its own thread. So it's usually something that's hanging, but not in a very secure way. Pity is when you have, when you feel really sorry for someone, but it's not really sadness. Pity is more when you feel that that person has no hope. So if you pity someone who has to live on the street, it can almost be a bit patronizing because you feel that that person doesn't have hope for an alternative. So pity is something that I think Jesus also spoke about on the cross. He said, take pity on them because they know not what they do. So it's when you really feel sorry for someone because they're trapped in a situation that they can't get out of. I think the Afrikaans would be bejammering, ja, bejammer iemand. And then the next word is dew. So dew is dew in the oggend, so like dew on the grass. So it's very fine droplets of water. And the last word you have there, neath, occurs in the second last line, like a man from a rope beneath his head. So that's just a word where they've omitted the B and the E because it's beneath. So the writers just decided to leave away the B and the E and chop it down to neath. And it was probably a decision about rhyme and the sort of pace of the poem that he decided to do that. So what else did you think about this poem?
I thought it was a very interesting poem, because it made me think about a lot of things,
Yes.
especially like thinking about the struggle and how it must have been for him
Yes.
personally, and also how he must have felt, that they lost so many comrades and
Yes.
they didn't really get to see what they were fighting for.
Exactly, exactly. That's exactly that feeling of futility. Futility is a lovely word when things are tevergeefs. And so hope is spoken about in the poem. And in the last line where he says, he's tired of hoping to hope. Daai tevergeefsheid, daai futility of struggling for many, many years because the struggle against apartheid went on for so long. And they never really knew if they're going to have any success. And so, yes, definitely one can have empathy with them. You know what the weird thing is, when I talk about this poem to my students in grade 10, they don't really like it, but maybe it's because they can't really empathize with the situation. So I was thinking that if you think of other situations in life where you don't have hope, like say a mom wants to be pregnant and then she finally falls pregnant and there's a baby girl on the way, and she decorates the room with pink and with beautiful clothes and everything's ready, and then there's a miscarriage and she realizes she can never have a child after that. So that would be a similar situation where you've gone through a struggle to try for something that you've been hoping for, but your hopes get dashed. And so the clothes here are very symbolic of that sort of feeling of there's no hope anymore, we were trying for so long. And there's similar things, some people struggle with school, they get expelled from various schools, and in the end they don't write matric because it just becomes a struggle that's futile. There's a lot of interesting aspects, there are many interesting aspects to this poem, but you mentioned the dew, and this is a very interesting line, that the water dripped, the shoes dripped in water like a window, crying dew. So that really relates to the sadness of the poem and the sort of crying. So dewdrops, because they're such fine drops, also sometimes resemble the teardrops that we have. So this is very much about the sadness of this person who's come back home and finds his comrade's clothes on the washing line because the comrade has died, probably from a stab wound. And his clothes have now been washed by whoever looks after the clothes in the home, because you have to do something with the dead person's clothes. And this person has decided to wash the clothes, and so the clothes that are dripping water become part of the sadness. What else would you like to talk about?
The shoes rested for the first time from when they were new. Yes, this suggests that the comrade was poor, or...
Okay. The shoes that rested for the first time. So yeah, that's very well spotted. Why would shoes rest for the first time only when you're dead? It could be that it was his only pair of shoes, so he wasn't doing very well financially, he was a poor person. Other things in the poem also suggest that, like the trousers, oversized black striped trousers. So they're oversized maybe because he used to have enough food on his table and he was nice and fat. But then he didn't have enough food, so he became very thin from not having food, from exertion in the struggle, from physical fatigue. So the shoes and the trousers and the aspects of his the colourless jacket as well. So in other words, it's been through the wash so many times that now it's lost all its colour. And the pink shirt. Okay, so all the aspects of the clothes here seem to be suggesting that he doesn't have many clothes. Also, the fact that they haven't rested says that he leads a very active life. He's not someone to sit around and watch TV.
And then in line 12, ma'am, it said that the water coming from the clothes are perhaps also salty. Is there a reason why that could be?
Okay, yes. So the water that's dripping from the clothes is red because that would be because he was stabbed or there was some injury to him where his blood contaminated the clothes. But the salty could be that he was trying to run away, maybe running away from the police, so he sweated a lot. The salty also relates back to the idea of the tears, because tears are salty. So it could be that he had physical exertion, he was running away, or he was in some kind of physical struggle where he sweated. And obviously was very nervous because no one wants to get caught during the struggle because you know your life's going to end because the police weren't very nice.
And then it said that his jacket still had mud, ma'am. Could that be that he was involved in a physical fight and didn't die during his struggle?
Okay, the jacket that had mud, yes, that's a very interesting line because for a jacket to have mud, you basically would need to roll in the mud. So it could be that he was in a real fight, like a physical skirmish with the police, and he was dragged through the mud. I mean, there are accounts of people who were dragged behind police vans, and that kind of very brutal aspect of apartheid brutality from the police, because it's not just dust. You know, if you get a bit of stoffies of your bike, then you can wash it off without being muddy. So this is very ominous. Why is it muddy? Something terrible happened to this man, in which he was basically dragged through the mud somehow.
And then the last question comes in the last line. Tired of hoping to hope. Does this mean that the writer has abandoned all hope in the struggle, or does it mean that he is just not hoping anymore?
Okay, so why is he tired of hoping to hope? Has he given up on the struggle, or is he just sort of upset about the situation? If I think about it, it's probably because Serote came home. He comes home in the morning, which is intriguing. Either he was doing night shift or he was out doing something that was involving himself in the struggle and having a meeting in the middle of the night. Or maybe he was doing something that wasn't legal, so he had to do it under the cover of darkness. And the fact that then he doesn't have hope, so he comes home in the morning. The morning is usually symbolic of hope because that's a new day. So during this morning, he sees something that makes him so sad that he loses hope. So I think if I was this person witnessing my buddy, I don't think it was a family member of his, I think it's someone who stayed in the house or the commune with him. And so if I see now that this person who I know is obviously dead, in that moment I would probably want to give up. And I would feel there's no hope in even hoping. So I think in that moment, Serote actually gave up. Maybe the next day he felt different. But I think in that moment he gave up and he thought the struggle is not worth it. And I think in that moment, obviously the person who died also had been forced to give up. So there was no hope, it was futile. Thanks for the questions, I really liked them. Hope you enjoyed our discussion.